Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we are through to the rubber match of this best of 3 series between two of the best Terrans at MLG Raleigh 2011, fighting through the open bracket for a chance to play in the championship pools. Now over here in the top position in Metalopolis is our blue Terran, none other than Team Liquid's Jinro. And over here in the bottom we have Complexity Gaming's TriMaster spawning as the red Terran. Now Metalopolis of course has been around since the beta. Everybody loves this map. Oh, just recently removed from ladder play by Blizzard actually, to make room for some new maps and some variety on the ladder. It was also mentioned that apparently the map is reasonably favored towards Zerg, I think it was, at high level play when Metalopolis was played in tournaments and high level on the ladder, but traditionally it's still kept as a map of choice for many of the tournaments played these days. So we've had two completely different games come out of these two players so far. In game one we saw an absolutely amazing build order win from Jinro, where he very wisely scouted and reacted to double starport play coming out of TriMaster. TriMaster managing with some amazing battle cruiser repair, pushing Jinro back several times, but Jinro ultimately taking that win. Game 2 turned to be a massive slugfest of a macro game on Tal Darim Altar, with a lot of tank positioning and again some mech play coming out of Jinro, but facing a sort of combination mech bio play coming out of TriMaster, with TriMaster eventually using the superior mobility of his 3-3 bio to squeeze out a win in just under an hour. So we now have both of these players reasonably tired after that last game, playing this rubber match on MLG Metalopolis. Of course, cross positions, so both players are going to get the maximum potential to do some sort of a macro game here and split the map down the middle. We do see scouting going on with TriMaster leaving his SCV at his, what I would call his offensive Zelnaga watchtower, the one closer to Jinro's base, just to see if there are any timings coming out of Jinro there. Meanwhile, Jinro just patrolling a marine on the very edge of the cliff here, which is actually quite a smart thing to do, because you can just about get away with seeing if any SCVs or any interesting units like Hellions, for example, pop around to scout or harass. So highly recommended that people do this, especially when you spawn in a base with a lot of cliffs where it's very easy to perform some sort of drop play. And right on cue we have the Reaper coming out from TriMaster. Okay, the Marine is going to go down, but Jinro knows immediately what's going on, and some incredible game sense there. He knows how this map is played. He's played so many games on this map that he knows it's invaluable to have that scout on the ledge there. Incredible play from Jinro. We do, however, have another Reaper in play from TriMaster, and he's going to... No, that is not the Reaper. I wonder where the Reaper is. Let's see if we can find it. Is it still in his base? We have a Marauder popping out. Now, no, the Marauder is actually just the Marauder? I don't even know what that means. Some awesome combination of these two. But the Reaper is just going to be hanging out at the natural. I would have liked this Reaper to do a little bit more scouting. I realized that the first one did die, and Jinro is going to be on the lookout for it with a couple of Marines placed here. But it would still be quite useful at, say, one of the towers. Meanwhile, we do have a Hellion attempting to poke through from Jinro. So Jinro, again, favoring his mech play and actually going for a reasonably quick Banshee again, although Cloak is not being researched. So Jinro favoring mech play, going for that quick Banshee, not going for Cloak. And this factory is just going to hover around. Presumably, once the first Banshee's out, he's going to swap back the Tech Lab and go for either Siege Tanks or Blue Flame Hellions. We're going to see which. Blue Flame Hellions immediately going down from Jinro. So not quite a heavy starport composition coming out of Jinro this game. Just going to have the one Banshee for the occasional harass. Unfortunately for him though, TriMaster already again has the engineering bay down, researching +1 for his bio and putting down a missile turret. So very nice play, very good game sense. No, great knowledge of Banshee timings and that turret just goes down just before the Banshee could have gotten to the mineral line. Very, very good play there from TriMaster. We're probably also going to see a turret pop out somewhere in the natural soon as well, as Jinro's Banshee does reposition itself for another stab at anything really inside the base. He's going to manage to stop the SCV that's building the factory. Another missile turret going up just in the middle of the production structures to stop any harass going on here. And let me see, we do finally have the turret going up in the mineral line at the natural expansion. So it looks like Jinro not really going to get too much done with this Banshee, but then again it still has quite a lot of hit points and it has potential later on in the game. So taking a quick look at what's going on, it looks like Blue Flame is just about to finish, and a couple more Hellions being made. When no reactor went down on the starport, but a reactor did go down on the barracks, which is just floated out. So that would suggest to me that this factory is about to be floated over here, which is exactly what Jinro does, so that he can make a couple more Hellions for future harass. We might even see a medevac pop out of here so we can get some drops coming into play. TriMaster once again with these early upgrades, so he's doing reasonably well. This missile turret just about scouts that medevac. I wonder if TriMaster's reacting. I don't think he saw it, but here we go. We have 3 Hellions going into the mineral line, and boom, a couple of SCVs going down straight away. TriMaster not reacting that quickly just yet. All those SCVs still mining. Quite a lot of them do go down before Marines get sent to clean up. Wait, did Marines just get sent to clean up Hellions? Oh my goodness, a lot of stuff is dying. This is brilliant harass from Jinro. Some slightly questionable responses here from TriMaster, who loses an awful lot of units. 17 workers killed from Liquid Jinro to the 0 of TriMaster, and a whole bunch of units killed as well. This is simply incredible. If we take a look, the SCV count is now 42 to 29, or 27 a moment ago, in Jinro's favor. So that was an absolutely brilliant Hellion harass. Highly impressive, and it looks like Jinro has taken a firm foothold in this best of 3 series. If Jinro wins this game, of course, he will advance to the 6th and final round of the MLG Raleigh Open bracket, and he will have a stab at qualifying for that coveted 6th position in the pool play, where he effectively has to skip an awful lot more games and gets a little bit of a rest before the final bunch. We do, however, have a little bit more Hellion harass. Some very nice Sim City going on here from TriMaster, just completely blocking access from the right-hand side of the natural expansion. And these Hellions look like they're not going to be micro too hard, and they do just go down. But that's because they were a distraction tactic from the Hellions that also actually get cleaned up in the main base. TriMaster being a little bit more on his toes this time, and but that said, 30 workers have now been killed. So even though the first set of harass did do an awful lot of damage, Jinro did just about manage to collect about 10 SCVs off that second harass, so it was slightly better than I initially thought. Right, now TriMaster has decided enough is enough, and he is going to start moving across the map. In fact, some of these reinforcements from Jinro do get caught out, and it looks like there's going to be a bit of a sloppy engagement here. There's Hellions taking a little bit of damage, but a couple of bio units from Jinro also going down. We do have 1-0 upgrades done on the bio from TriMaster. And we have an awful lot of Hellions and a couple of siege tanks with siege mode over here. It looks like TriMaster's not going to be able to get in, and he wisely pulls back. Siege mode is simply going to be superior to this bio at this point of the game. And the Hellions do come in to try and take out the rest of those Marines. A couple of Marauders do survive, but it looks like, oh no, a couple of Vikings out as well. So it looks like these medevacs are also going to go down to TriMaster. This game just got bad to worse for him, and it's going to be more difficult for him to resupply compared to Jinro, because the SCV count Jinro has been keeping up, and it's now 55 to 35 SCVs. That is, he is maintaining his lead very, very well, and it looks like both of them are popping out their 3rd orbital commands, otherwise until they get floated to the 3rd, known as the macro orbitals, which is perfectly legitimate. In fact, late game TvT, it's quite often that people suicide their SCVs because they just have 4 or 5 orbitals calling down mules, and that's the only income they need. These will eventually become 3rd bases, though, as Jinro is now demonstrating. They're not actually macro orbitals just yet, but they will do if the game lasts anywhere close to how long it lasted last game, so we're going to have to see. In the meantime, TriMaster does start researching his own siege mode, And he's still getting out some bio units, so he's still favoring this bio-heavy style, whereas Jinro once again is going pure mech. Presumably it might be something picked up in Korea, I'm not entirely sure. Another bunch of Hellions do pop in, and only one survives long enough to make it into the mineral line. Will he get any SCVs? No, even that mule manages to survive. One more hit would have killed it. So that latest harass not being terribly effective, but we do have a bio drop going on in the maid of Jinro, which is going to be cleaned up by these siege tanks. Unfortunately, those Hellions blocking the siege tanks so that they can't make any more headway, but luckily the Hellions are simply enough to take this down with the limited firing of one or two of those siege tanks in front. These were basically blocked off. Not a problem though, more than enough to deal with it. Jinro hasn't spread himself thin across the map, and it's not really an issue. Now we do have a whole lot of Hellions coming down here. Unfortunately the Marauder, which survives incredibly long at this watchtower, does see them coming. That's how many? That is actually 7 Hellions and a wolf statue that I've just selected. They survive incredibly long time against that Marauder, but that Marauder also surviving incredibly long against them. This bio drop in the third of Jinro does do a little bit of damage and does deter a bit of mining, but doesn't otherwise do too much. A couple of mules now being called down and a few Hellions on the ground to sort of stop any more shenanigans there, with these tanks to back it up if things really do get hairy. TriMaster's just going to heal up his units here and presumably load them back up for a drop at some other point. Or some sort of harass. We do have the Vikings popping in now, and they are going to spot the medevac. Unfortunately, the Hellions are also here, so stimming to attack the Vikings really isn't going to bode very well, and the medevac and the Marines are all going to go down. TriMaster now also taking his third and completely mule bombing the crap out of it. He's got a full bunker here as well, so he really doesn't want to be harassed. Some very nice Sim City kind of anti-Hellion styles coming up here. A Sensor Tower has also come through from Jinro, as he doesn't want any interesting shenanigans popping at him from the right-hand side of the map. But I sense a possible flaw here. Okay, this Sensor Tower could possibly be a little bit better placed. I would probably place it somewhere around here, and here's why. He's actually left a small gap at the top of the map, which means that a drop can still go all the way around the range of this tower and get into the main without much problem, as well as get into the natural. I know the reason Jinro put it there. It's because he also wants to see any units coming down this main road as well. But he can sort of compromise by placing the Sensor Tower a little bit further this way, say around this position, where he would see the units coming down this main road, as well as it completely cover off drop play to the north. So once TriMaster notices this, he might send a drop or maybe a couple of Banshees that way as well, to try and abuse the position of that Sensor Tower, because Jinro might think he's safe now that he's put one there. We do have a possible engagement brewing up in the middle of the map as TriMaster moves out with some Marines and tanks, but now he retreats calmly back into his natural, turtling up now while Jinro aggressively takes the gold. I am liking this move. Tanks sieging up everywhere to make sure there's no stim bio going to come in and do some harass. These watchtowers being held by Jinro at the moment as well. And Jinro is absolutely dominating map control. I'm highly impressed. We now have 73 against 57 in terms of SCVs. This gold is slightly oversaturated from Jinro. He doesn't need quite this many here. It would be good to see him perhaps take a fourth with some of those SCVs. You have some Hellions coming back into the natural. And is it sufficiently sim-citied up? No, they managed to get into the mineral line, and those SCVs are incredibly clumped up. Will these Hellions do anything before? Oh my god, a lot of SCVs do go down. The Hellions do get cleaned up thanks to that bunker. But unfortunately, the SCV count has effectively just been reset. 73 to 41 SCVs in Jinro's favor now. His harass has really been top-notch this game, and he is looking unstoppable as it currently stands. He's now slowly pushing forward on the east side of the map just to get rid of this tactical turret that TriMaster has put up here to deter any sort of drop from Jinro. But TriMaster, being the very good player he is, just decides to be very stubborn and stick another one right there. God, if I was the owner of Rob's Guns right now, I'd be pretty terrified of these tanks camped out outside of my door. Right, so we do have TriMaster moving out on the east side of the map. He may come and try and take possession of this watchtower, but it's also incredibly difficult to take, so I don't really know what he's going to do. The scan does go down, and I think TriMaster now realizes that that could be quite difficult, so he sensibly recalls his army to a safe position and is not walking in there. Oh wow, we have a massive drop going on here. Lots and lots of siege tanks in those medevacs, as well as Marines as well. That is actually 6 full medevacs now going around the outskirts of the map. And if you take a look closely, just as we spotted before, they are going to skirt around this sensor tower range. I don't know whether they're going to pop into the main or the natural, but either or is possible at this point. The main would be where all the production structures do get camped, but the natural would be where Jinro has mined less, so we'll see what TriMaster decides to do in just a moment. Some bio units down here, bit of a standoff with a bunch of tanks, but that's not going to matter because Jinro's mech army is a lot less mobile compared to, and he does drop into the main, compared to this very, very mobile force that TriMaster has decided to just launch into the main of Jinro. Those 2 siege tanks on the low ground immediately get taken out. These tanks are sieged up, and Jinro's production structures are well and truly camped. These starports getting taken down reasonably quickly. Jinro having to emergency retreat most of his army back. He's got the Vikings doing damage to the medevacs. These siege tanks on the ground could do quite a lot of damage. He should probably walk them over to attack the structures down here, and that's exactly what he does. You've got a few more Hellions coming in as well, and siege tanks siege on the low ground. Jinro knows that he's effectively lost his main, and what he needs to do now is damage control. And behind this TriMaster, brilliant move, expanding to the right-hand side position, and now Jinro finally rushes in. Those Hellions are a little bit sacrificial in nature, but they do give time for a couple of tanks to siege up and do some critical damage to this bio. The Vikings now move in onto the outskirts. I'm wondering if they're going to come in here and possibly land on top of the siege tanks if they stay siege, but they do unsiege, so that's probably not going to be too profitable. Sniping off some of those medevacs, the backbone of this army in the long term, because that bio is going to get healed, and Jinro is going to move in to try and clean up this run. TriMaster can try and hold out for as long as he wants, but in reality, he probably should start going medevac now. And never mind, those Vikings are going to come in and sweep up the last medevacs. This army is now stranded with nowhere to go. All they can do is hold out as long as they can and wait. We do have, ouch, the tactical mule being called down by Jinro to try and get the siege tank splash damage to do something. But none of the siege tanks actually die, and he just 1A's it. The Vikings land, and this is going to get cleaned up. We do now have an interesting situation where the natural at the 3 o'clock position has been taken by TriMaster, and the main has been taken by Jinro. I suspect there's going to be some sort of violent engagement at some point soon. Jinro doesn't know about the base, or he does now, and TriMaster doesn't know about the base at the main. So this could get quite funny, but I do think Jinro is going to try and take this base out, and TriMaster is also going to try and take this out once he finds out about it. I'm pretty sure, yes, TriMaster does know about the gold, but he is not too worried. He is just trying to expand around the periphery of the map, desperately trying to catch up to Jinro, and leaving the gold for last just because it's quite difficult to take, especially with this beautiful positioning Jinro has here. Jinro's also expanding to the left-hand side of the map. He's really making his macro count. And here we go, a massive push here by TriMaster, taking the left-hand side watchtower and possibly getting to within spitting distance of this gold base. Jinro desperately trying to reposition, and it looks like he might do it in time. But TriMaster isn't actually going for the gold. He's going to camp out here for a little bit and stim up. It looks like he's going to come up here because he has noticed the sensor tower placement just to check any air coming out of TriMaster's main, and he's going to very, very quickly clean this up. Jinro does lift up the command center for what it's worth, but if the Marines decide to follow it, it could probably still burn down. He's decided not to because the army of Jinro is coming up through the back. Once again, the army of TriMaster has nowhere to go. They have to stand and fight because otherwise there would just be no hope. They are going to at least try and get rid of this command center, which they do, but it looks like, yeah, Jinro's just going to creep forward and completely destroy this fire. The best thing he could do is take out as many of the tanks that he can by 1Aing in there before they siege up, but unfortunately Jinro sieges up, and that's going to be the end of that. Jinro leaving some of the rest of his tanks unsieged to creep forward, but it turns out that's not required. Both armies 1A into each other, and the mech does beat the bio. We do, however, have this small Bioforce here. Beautiful, beautiful play by TriMaster in his multitasking. Just popping over to the right and discouraging this base from mining anything, in addition to putting down his own. That orbital command is going to slowly burn down unless Jinro does something about it. And he's now repositioning his army into the middle of the map so that he can choose where to go when he next engages. However, we have got, look at these tanks. Notice how before TriMaster had a predominantly bio-heavy army and Jinro had something like 20 tanks. And now what TriMaster is doing is using this small Bioforce to go and harass. These are only 1-1 as opposed to 3-3 towards the end of the last game. But they're going to try and take down this orbital. The SCVs are going to be able to repair it, and it looks like the tanks once again will come in to save the day. It's currently 21 siege tanks against 18 siege tanks, a very quickly diminishing number of Marines as well. So, but yes, what I was saying just now is that I think it's brilliant how TriMaster started with a largely bio composition, and Jinro clearly outnumbered him in terms of tanks. Oh, hold on 1 second, these Hellions are going to do massive damage at this expansion. The entire game has been about Hellion harassing how many SCVs Jinro managed to destroy for TriMaster, and he's only extending that SCV advantage now. Unfortunately, it looks like this is going to get cleaned up. With a little bit better mic, we probably could have picked up these SCVs as well. And if we take a look at the unit counting station, it's actually surprisingly even because of this multitasking harass from TriMaster, first taking apart this space, then discouraging this space from moving anywhere, and TriMaster macroing up and getting himself back into this game surprisingly well, even though I would still say Jinro is at an advantage. But TriMaster, again, to try and go back to what I was saying, managed to transition into a reasonably tank-heavy composition, as we can see here, so quickly. And Jinro no longer had the tank advantage, or if he did, it was by just a little bit, whereas before, the tank advantage was massive. So we can see here Jinro does have more tanks than TriMaster, but by nowhere near as much as, say, 10 minutes ago in the game. TriMaster transitioning more towards mech, but still keeping those small pockets of bioforces in his army composition, which I like very much. Gives him that little bit more mobility that Jinro currently doesn't have, even though his total army size is larger. Meanwhile, we have a couple of Banshees taking out a few tanks in the back. Oh no, this is probably quite bad for TriMaster. He needs to stint back with those Marines, but those Marines are at very low health, and we have a couple of siege tanks back here. Oh no! Oh, the majority of those going down. TriMaster once again going up the ramp to see if this base has been rebuilt, but it hasn't, and it looks like once again he's going to get boxed in. All Jinro has to do is calmly move forward with a couple of Banshees and then siege up on the low ground. TriMaster will again be stranded. So TriMaster's going to make the most of this situation by just taking out those missile turrets. We do have a massive engagement going on over here. The Banshees are just going to take out those tanks. Those Marines are going to stint back. They have exactly not very much health. And this army, once again, is going to get cleaned up. Jinro just... TriMaster doing so much good stuff with the multitasking, preventing Jinro from mining at these peripheral bases. But Jinro just consistently beating TriMaster at all these engagements. It's Jinro playing a very, very solid game. TriMaster having very much difficulty taking Jinro on in terms of a face-to-face confrontation. This gold base now no longer has very many SCVs mining, but it is also mined out. Jinro is only mining from this base right now, if you don't count the 1 or 2 SCVs mining at the gold. So he is currently, despite taking the gold first, starving out first. TriMaster mule bombing the right hand side, and he's been able to keep a hold of these 2 bases, while Jinro has been unable to take and keep a hold of these 2, and that's largely down to TriMaster's multitasking as it currently stands. Just a couple of Hellions getting mopped up over there, but Jinro does look like he's mobilizing his army for a reasonably large push. We have tanks sieging up on the low ground, and it looks like we're going to have a bit of an elevator drop into this space. 4 Blue Flame Hellions do pop by, but a Marauder and a Bunker will see to it that their damage is limited. They do go back to the main army, and I'd love to see TriMaster try and push through with his superior tank numbers now into this position. I'm not really sure what the hesitation is here from Jinro. I think he is a very, very good position. He's just giving TriMaster time to sort of siege up and see if he can defend. If Jinro manages to get a scan onto the high ground and can see that these tanks are sieged up over here, what I would do as Jinro now is possibly unsiege my tanks, immediately come down to this sort of position and siege up here and try and cut off TriMaster's army from most of the rest of his production structure so that he can't get reinforcements, and then slowly try and crush out the battle victory from there. As it currently stands though, we have Viking on Viking action. The battle lines have been drawn. No Raven out for either side, so no point defense drone to skew the battle one way or another, although that said, TriMaster does have a Thor incoming. Let's get it, or rather on the field right here, although it didn't engage in that Viking battle for fear of splash damage from those siege tanks. Sensor towers now popping up, and yeah, not a lot else going on, I'm afraid, at the moment. Again, battle lines have been drawn. Finally, we've reached a stage where, just like in Game 2, we had tank versus tank action, except in Game 2 it happened to be for most of the game, to be honest, and here it's taken until the 35-minute mark for this kind of play to resume. So a lot more creative play coming out of both players this game. Jinro with the early gold as well, taking an early advantage but unable to capitalize. In the meantime, we have TriMaster once again abusing this drop play, although this sensor tower is no longer here, so he doesn't have to worry about being detected early. That is 5 medevacs worth of Marines, presumably going to drop down here in the natural, where a lot of production structures already are. Unfortunately, Jinro looks like he has seen this, and 2 Thors and Vikings do pop out. They are going to do massive damage to these dropships. 1 dropship goes down, the others are releasing their Marines. This is going to get crushed. Absolutely brilliant game sense here from Jinro, but TriMaster manages to get a reasonable number of Marines out, and that's the problem. These Marines are so high DPS. Luckily, a couple of Hellions do pop in to save the day. There were I don't think there were any Marauders in those dropships, so they didn't give the Hellions too much trouble at all. Now we've got a lot of Thors coming out from Jinro now. He's decided to switch into a little bit more Thor-heavy composition, and probably rightly so, given the sheer amount of Vikings and tanks he has. But he's still having difficulty mining off these side bases, though. This base is up, and this base is just about up, but very, very few units are actually mining as it currently stands. If we take a look at the income tab, Jinro is ahead, just about, although I presume TriMaster is going ahead when he mules. The problem is, though, this gold is nearly mined out, and TriMaster has a healthy amount of minerals on this base, and also a healthy amount of minerals on here as well. Provided he can get some quick positioning, TriMaster might be able to take the gold himself later on. We do see a push coming out from Jinro, a scary amount of tanks and Vikings sieging up here outside the main of TriMaster, going to camp out a couple of production structures. There are currently no medevacs here, so we're not going to see an elevator drop just yet of those tanks into the main like we did on the other half of the map. And TriMaster sieging up to form some sort of uneasy trench warfare over here, right on either side of this men statue, with both sides seem to respect enough not to destroy. So Thor popping in here just to try and negate some of that air advantage Jinro has, but unfortunately these Vikings are just huge. I mean, there's now a Raven out for Jinro as well, and we have 22 Vikings to the 9 of TriMaster. So really all this Thor is doing is preventing these Vikings from just getting ruffle-stomped. We do see a couple of Hellions popping around here, and we're going to see if they can take off any SCVs, and it looks like that Marine drop is going to help clean up some of it. 1 Hellion does survive, gets a couple of SCV kills, but not too many, and that does get cleaned up. Both players now have a little bit of a trust fund in the bank, although TriMaster reasonably good with gas, because where Jinro took the gold and has the 2 gas geysers here, TriMaster effectively took 2 bases on the right-hand side and is mining gas off both of them. Jinro still needs to keep up with his macro on the left-hand side of the map, where he has finally managed to take these 2 bases, but only this one really putting any sort of income into his coffers. In the meantime, no further damage is being done in TriMaster's base, so all is well. And we also have ship weapons being researched by Jinro to try and, I guess, cement his Viking advantage, but he has such a large advantage in numbers anyway. I would have thought that's almost not required. It's of course he has to worry about. And here we go. Do we have a point defense drone? Where is the Raven? I don't actually see the Raven there. Was it taken a note? 2 Ravens are in play. They're just not here for some reason. So that's slightly unfortunate for Jinro. With a couple of point defense drones, that battle could have been very, very good. PDD, of course, also blocking the airborne shots from the Thors as well. So a little bit of mispositioning. Here's one of the Ravens at least. It really needs to start participating in the battle, because unfortunately these siege tanks are just going down thanks to these high ground tanks when those Vikings retreat, and it looks like a bit of a blunder from Jinro. They're losing a massive number of tanks, and all of a sudden it's beginning to look like it's advantage TriMaster, who's more successfully utilizing the money in his bank. 3-3 is coming out for TriMaster, and remember, because Jinro doesn't have that much gas, ideally he wants to produce Hellions or Marines, both of which are incredibly ineffective against the army composition that TriMaster currently has, because his bio is simply 2-2, and Jinro's bio is nowhere close to that, so even if he did pump out Marines, they just would be inferior to TriMaster's force. It looks like, unfortunately, for Jinro, the balance has swung in TriMaster's favor. He does land all the Vikings to try and deal with these siege tanks to stop this push going through to the gold, which is now mined out. It looks like that's not going to happen. Auto turrets being put down by the Ravens, but they're not going to help very much because the siege tanks just chow through them. And it looks like TriMaster is just going to stomp this base, which is a problem because it is effectively the last fully mining base Jinro currently has. If he takes this out and the war of attrition lasts much longer, Jinro will go down, and he realizes this, and GG's. So it looks like TriMaster is going to win this series 2-1 and advance to the 6th and final round of the MLG Open bracket. Incredible game. I think that TriMaster benefited a lot late game from especially this misengagement here from Jinro, where he lost quite a lot of siege tanks. I felt Jinro was ahead for the large portion of that game, and unfortunately threw it away a little bit at the end. But that's not to take anything away from TriMaster. His incredible bio play, his very effective drops down the north end of the map, as well as his constant harassment, even during engagements that he was losing around the other ends of the map, just stopping Jinro from mining at these bases, stopping Jinro from mining and making sure he kills off a couple of command centers around here, meant that Jinro couldn't really take these expansions until very late in the game. Look how many minerals are still left at these expansions. They've barely been touched, and that's because of TriMaster's constant harass, and Jinro's macro not quite able to keep up with it on this occasion. So an incredibly entertaining series, very good play from both players, and it looks like Jinro is going to be dropping to the losers bracket, and TriMaster is going to be advancing to the winners finals for a chance to play in the championship pool.